Alex, are you here? Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah, I can hear you guys. I think there's a delay on my end, but all good.
Oh yeah. You guys' signal is coming in weak right now. Coming in weak, but we'll work it out. We'll try to smooth it over. Hopefully it jives into place.
So we've got a crazy storm kind of coming through Dubai. So actually, on the way back from the Super Bowl, I was driving around trying to find non-flooded areas, and it's just been affecting everything.
Oh, that's nuts. I'm sorry to hear about that. Is that something that Dubai has to deal with often, or is this like a freak weird thing?
I'd say the weather is more a freak weird thing. I mean, there was some snow in some parts. There was hail like golf ball sized hail. The thing is, though, is that they don't really get, they're not accustomed to rain. They never really had to build out so much infrastructure to deal with it. So there's no like drainage pipes, kind of like in cities where you kind of get like it goes to the sewage and the water goes in and drains off the streets. So here it just kind of puddles up wherever the basically like the lowest common area is that there's no kind of outflow from. So you just get these flooded streets everywhere during the rain. On the flip side, there's not that much rain.
Oh, that's weird. That's crazy. So yeah, hopefully that doesn't affect you guys too much, your infrastructure, your signal, or any of that stuff. We get luckily my property is positioned in a way that it basically never flood. But that's the one of the benefits of living on the side of a mountain. You know what I mean? But yeah, we get a
Just don't
lot of rain.
slide off it, Theo.
Yeah, it just slides around. But we expect to have pretty much rain all summer because for all the snow I did send you, that's barely any, right? We should have had way, 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 way more. So I expect it to just rain all summer long. Um, but yeah, despite the storm talk, Super Bowl, I didn't watch it. I watched the commercials though. I tried watching the commercials on YouTube, but the ads kept playing. Get it. Yeah, how was it? How was the Super Bowl, guys? Did you guys enjoy it?
For me, it's boring, predictable, and I think football is just like WWE, like it's scripted. I don't believe in. I know it's an odd take, but I've been watching sports all my life, and as I get older, I start to realize that certain things are just weird and obvious. And last night was the first time and I didn't have a dog in the game. Like I didn't care what side won, but yeah, it was just weird. The whole game just felt like so. This is gonna happen next. This is gonna happen next, and so yeah, I'm not. Well, yeah, I am a conspiracy theorist, but yeah, like I didn't enjoy it last night, unfortunately.
Oh, interesting. I'm kind of with you. I was out I mean, geez, I think it was like 2010, 2011, that year where the Falcons were completely undefeated, like all the way up until the semifinals, and then they got just destroyed by a team that had barely won all season long, and then that team went to the Super Bowl. I was like, yeah, dude, football's fucked. Even if it's not rigged, it needs better structure. This is stupid.
It's just weird. Like the guy misses a field goal, then he comes back and he hits a 56-yard field goal, and it's just like I don't know. Like it just like everything was like if it was rigged, this is gonna happen next. Boom, it happens next. Like and it's just I don't know. Like but again, like I have since I've been introduced to Web3, I haven't watched sports like I used to. I don't. I don't enjoy watching other people make money doing stuff when I could be making money. So like, I'm not a big fan of sports like I used to be. But yeah, like, I thought it was cool, last night for certain things, but I enjoyed the commercials more than I enjoyed the game.
Well, we didn't get the commercials because we were watching the like Sky Sports version, and we kind of got gypped on that. But um, yeah, that was kind of a pain. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, that's one of the reasons why growing up, I think I was a bigger fan of college football over the NFL because the NFL always felt like it was selling out. I mean, it was the peak performance of football. Don't get me wrong, but it just didn't have that purity that college sports had. So for me, it was more about you know the
Uh, Like, listen,
USC games.
I'm born and raised in New England, and even I was like, okay, the Patriots win a little too much. Like, this is kind of stupid. Like, what's happened? Like, why? Like, why?
I did
I
meet
think
someone interesting though last night, Theo. So we went with some of our friends from Arts Dow, and one of the guys there, they're tokenizing. Funny segue straight into RWAs from the Super Bowl, but they're tokenizing essentially like a treasury bond, government treasury bonds, but they're not just tokenizing U.S. treasury bonds. They're tokenizing multiple different countries' treasury bonds, and then allowing you to create your own ETF around what type of breakup, like distribution or the diversity between which bonds you want. And then they're also doing a USD stablecoin backed by treasury bonds, which is, I mean, it kind of sounds like Mountain Protocol and USDC, but then it really makes a difference. Are they going to be more Mountain Protocol where the stablecoin holders get the yield, or is it going to be more like USDC? So interesting connections. Dubai is full of surprises.
Bro, after our talk on Monday, I ended up like all week long being exposed to different RWA announcements, like people like saying we're gonna do this project, and then I'm like, I don't see how that sounds like an RWA. Like, and I start to grill them, and then they're like, get off our stage, and then other ones that like just didn't make sense, like the way they're degening these RWAs into trying to convince people like they're gonna do this. Like one of the projects was RWA on subdomains, and I was like, where is the real world asset in a subdomain? And so like different stuff like that all week long after our talk, I started hearing about RWAs from other people.
That's huge. That's really huge. And also, I mean, domain names can be RWAs. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, imagine if your domain name was like on GoDaddy was a token that you can just instantly trade on a DEX or lease out to somebody. That would make it a lot cooler than, let's say, oh, well, I have to use it on GoDaddy, or I'm stuck with GoDaddy or Namecheap or whatever. And then you've got like, you've got ENS, you've got Tezos domains, you've got all these different like wallet address names that you can also then use to launch your own website as well. So, basically the whole idea with RWA is essentially that it gives you ownership over something that's real in the world, and that real thing could actually be digital. Don't get me wrong, but it's like a domain name. But my issue is when you got these like people who are just trying to get onto the hype of RWAs, and they're like, oh well, we tokenized or they call stable coins RWAs. Like on a technicality, a stable coin is a tokenized version of a fiat currency, but that's not really the spirit of what people mean by RWAs. And so I've kind of got a little bit of I wouldn't call it issues, but I think we need to make a distinction between like currency RWAs and basically RWAs that are assets.
I love that. Yeah, because that's where I think the breakdown I wasn't understanding is like I assumed that all RWAs was eventually going to be tokenized as a investment asset, and then somewhere throughout the week I started realizing, wait a second, these are going to be decoupled, and not all of them are going to be investment assets.
Yeah, and that's where I think the big difference is there needs to be a segment called tradable RWAs. If you look at, so if you go to DeFi Llama and you look up the RWA ecosystem, it's going to place MakerDAO and Staked USDT as the top two RWA platforms with roughly 2 billion and like 1.5 and change. Don't quote me on that. It changes every minute. So I could feel Theo right now actually being like, I'm going to quote him on this. But when it comes to MakerDAO, so what they really did was they basically took a ton of money, bought a bunch of, or at least partnered to put a lot of RWAs into centralized custody, and then minted a stable coin, DAI, obviously, based off of those RWAs that are centrally custodied. You can't actually buy and sell into whatever real estate that they've got in that portfolio. It's just backing up the DAI that's there. So that doesn't really scream RWA to me. For them to be at the top of the list is a bit like kind of flouting their feathers a little, a little high.
Whatever they're doing, it's 55% of their revenue right now. So it's killing it. Hashtag
No,
winning.
don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're killing it with that. Don't get me wrong. But this is not that like tokenized assets on chain utopia of democratizing access to investments that people think of when they think of RWAs. Staked USDT gets a little bit more interesting because it's kind of like just basically providing LP to a fund where you stake your USDT on Ethereum or Tron. The brunt of the liquidity there is on Tron. They go buy RWAs, which in the regular world are just assets, right? They're buying multifamily housing and hotels and whatever, and then providing you a yield based off that dividend flow. So they're probably making a ton of cash on there, and it gives you the ability to earn a yield on your stable coins from assets from RWAs, but you're not actually purchasing the RWA itself. So if you were to go and actually if you were to go stake 10,000 USDT there, you'd get 5% yield, which is awesome. But with the real kicker with RWAs is that you should be able to go buy $10,000 worth of multifamily housing, and then not only do you get that yield and probably a higher yield than that, but you'll also get the principal appreciation of that real estate over time. And so platforms like Realty and Lofty are extremely cool for that, and that's still growing, and they're only at like 100 mil and 30 mil each in terms of tokenized assets. So that's that sector that I'm super keen on.
Okay, Alex, if you can clear so throughout the week, like I said, I've been on stages debating with certain entities that are trying to launch RWAs and things like that. And one of the questions that was brought up by somebody that was completely, I don't want to use the word ignorant, but like unknowing about RWAs, they approached me one late night asking me this question, and I wrote it down to ask you. So let's say there's a real estate that's labeling itself as an RWA, but then there's a central point that owns that real estate. Like let's say we get this large real estate that's willing to RWA or tokenize it. Are they all like the base of the real estate? Is it going to be centrally owned, and how do you protect that centralized entity from not just like they don't care about like what we care about? Like, how do you protect that centralized? If it starts from a centralized base, how do you then make it decentralized? I don't know if I'm being clear enough, but like, let's say you go into.
I think I got it. If you don't mind me jumping in.
Yeah, please.
So when it comes to RWAs, I think people need to realize is that they're not decentralized like crypto. This is not Bitcoin, Ethereum, Near, Solana, etc. This is RWAs because they are securities. They happen to be using a token to represent a security, but they are securities. And so in that case, they're not they're permissioned, right? They're not permissionless. So when it comes to just on that note, it is a more open financial ecosystem, but it is not a decentralized financial ecosystem. It's just a much more efficient and much more accessible and much more democratic way to access finance. That's on this pre-note there. So when it comes to the RWA itself, so it depends on the asset itself, but let's use real estate as an example. When you tokenize a piece of real estate, you essentially put it into an LLC or an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, and then you tokenize the shares of that holding company. So you're not tokenizing the deed of land for that, or if it's a hotel, you've got the deed of land and the business, but you put the assets into a holding company and you tokenize the shares of the holding company. So those tokens actually represent your legal ownership over the company. So it really depends on the type of legal structure you create for it. You could have it could just be a dividend producing RWA token. For example, the INX token. It's the only SEC approved security token exchange out of Canada. We've got a warm relationship with them. They raise capital on a dividend producing RWA token. It doesn't give you ownership rights, voting rights in the company, but it gives you the rights to the yield that the exchange will make. So that's on you can. It depends on how you structure it. So in the case of real estate, you would put the asset into this holding company, and it could have either a GP and then the token holders are LPs, so they don't really get voting rights. They just kind of get ownership rights in terms of appreciation and dividends. You could structure it where everybody actually gets voting rights, but when you fractionalize ownership between 1,000 people, it's a very inefficient way. Let's say someone comes and wants to sell the underlying asset in there. Let's call it a hotel, and they get an offer event a couple of years later for 50% higher. Asking 1,000 people if they want to sell or not is, I mean, it's the utopian ideal, but it's not practical. So you might have a trustee or a GP that will sell the asset. The RWA tokens would be burned from your wallet address, but you would get the proceeds of that sale into your account, well, into your wallet. So RWAs are the easier, more accessible, more democratic, more, I want to call it libertarian way of accessing investments, but they're not fully decentralized.
But there's already legal, legally, I'm trying to figure out like what is going to be a red flag for you when you're looking at certain things like that. Is it the breakdown of how they're, like you said, how it's legally broken down? What will represent a red flag for you where you're like, this is a more riskier RWA than others? Are there any red flags you're going to be looking for?
So it really depends on the underlying asset, right? One of them could be, so for example, Realty is tokenizing properties in for the most part in like Detroit and Chicago, single family homes. And then Lofty has got some properties that are, I think one of Lofty's properties is in like Paraguay or something. I need to look it up, but I know nothing about the real estate market in Paraguay. So, I would rather invest in this, it's like that thing, like do your own research, right? Understand what you're buying into. You could buy a tokenized piece of real estate, again, as an example, they could fractionalize the ownership of the Mona Lisa and give people a dividend yield on tickets to the Louvre. But that probably won't happen. But you can also tokenize whatever painting and call it something worthy. So you have to understand really what you're buying into. It's the same way of like, why would you buy a home in a bad neighborhood in LA as opposed to a Marriott hotel in Miami? Marriott's got a name to it. They show X amount of cash flow. If obviously there is legal paperwork that they need to provide. If that's not there, that's obviously a red flag. But it's the same way you'd vet any investment.
So I'm gonna pause right there because we went through a lot, and I just want to remind everybody down below who's listening that it's kind of open floor. We're just talking about RWAs and stuff. So yeah, if you want to come up, talk about RWAs, just send in a request, and we'd love to have you up. We're also talking about Superbowl stuff. What was your favorite ad? Mine was the old ladies fighting, Doritos, the goats, as always.
Did you guys see the Dunkin' Donuts ad with Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Tom Brady? It is amazing.
Oh no, I didn't see that one. I'm gonna have to go.
I highly recommend everyone see it.
I'm gonna have to go look it up. So yeah. But yeah, just as a reminder, everybody can come up. You feel free to give your opinions and stuff. And now back to the conversation at hand. It was we went through a lot just now, but back to your first question about like it starting centralized and dispersing from there. I mean, that's kind of just how things start in general. It's a broad question, so a very simple answer would be, that's exactly, even Bitcoin was centralized when it was first created before it was dispersed. You know what I mean? Like it all has to start somewhere. How it ends up decentralized, that's going to be steps that we have to take after we get this technology established.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually, I mean, this is completely off topic, but I do think that blockchain, in coming to its existence in the world, needed to be proof of work in order to ensure decentralization, as opposed to proof of stake, which typically comes with pre-mines. and then eventually the evolution of blockchain moved from proof of work to proof of stake, and then we can come up with these economic models for a healthy system to move forward in decentralization, investing periods, and everything. So, but when it comes to RWAs, specifically, just at least to say something about the topic, RWAs are vital to the future of DeFi because we cannot just take our banana tokens and our, spicy tuna wasabi tokens and use those. I mean, again, if they're for real platforms that accrue value, sure. But if they're just these meme coins, you're not going to build a financial ecosystem specifically only around meme coins. Some will hold their value over time. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm talking about is like if we want mainstream adoption, if we want mature markets, if we want to give access and democratize access to investments, then we need RWAs to be assets to be tokenized on chain as RWAs, and then to be integrated in DeFi so that when you go and you come to Maven and you have a portfolio of 5 hotel tokens and 3 multifamily tokens, some tokenized euros, and then I don't know, let's call it an insurance-linked security because you felt like you wanted to invest in insurance-linked securities for iPhone insurance, and you've got a 10,000 or 100,000 or $1 million portfolio. Your insurance-linked security might be more risky than your hotel tokens, but you can bundle that together in Maven and then take a loan against your entire portfolio. So what we're talking about is RWAs and their importance in DeFi is the ability to take a loan against mature financial products and investments and leverage your investment in DeFi, which takes seconds and it's essentially automated.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be looking for is like that first, because this is like you were saying, it's important and I get it that like kind of they've been around, but this is early introduction to, us, and so that guidance of like, hey, these are the first steps to, not get ourselves stuck in a bear trap, or some type of trap. So like, that's what I'm excited about is just being early as I can be to it. And then also, and then number 2, being able to teach others about it. And then number 3, making the first right moves where it's like, okay, I'm new to this. Just like the same thing like any other technology, right? When you first came to Web3, you didn't know where to put your money or where to anything. And so, being.
Oh, I still own my Cardano. Don't worry.
Oh, same here. Same here.
Joking about the first things you bought when you didn't know anything and came into Web3. Sorry, I had to throw that out.
Yeah. So, no, it's important for me to, because like I said, like you were saying, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to throw so-called, and I already sent 2 to Theo, like so-called exciting projects, but they themselves don't really understand the full weight of RWAs. I want to be able to like say, well, they understand it, but they don't understand it as much as I understand, like, and so, yeah, because like I said, I saw already 3 projects that were like RWAs. One was around insurance, the other one's around uh, pairing up regular domains with subdomains and then getting RWAs against them. And then the last but not least was just something kind of similar to y'all, where it was like based off of loans against something you would get. So yeah, like but that's exciting. Like you were saying, Alex, that's exciting to me because as soon as I came out of here, it's kind of like when you notice a red beetle, then you start to notice that they're everywhere because you have one now. Like I started noticing it everywhere once we finished our talks.
It's incredible, really, if you think about it. And then you start looking around and think, oh, this could be tokenized. That could be tokenized. I'm walking around with Sam. I'm like, hey, Sam, what if we did this? And he just wants to smack me across the face and be like, Alex,
It's
okay,
like
David, chill.
NFTs all over again.
And then so it gets really interesting when you start thinking like, okay, well, then you can start creating ETFs with these RWAs on chain. You can bundle a bunch of multifamily housing in Los Angeles, Dallas, Miami, New York, Kansas City, because just got the Super Bowl in mind, and create one token that owns. It's basically, I mean, at that point, it's basically a tokenized REIT if you think about it. But you can create these different things. Imagine if you could create, and I wrote I wrote something about this I think it was 2019 or 2020, um, about imagine if you took sports teams and you tokenize the equity of sports teams, and you've got a West Coast ETF and an East Coast ETF, or a California ETF on the ownership of those sports teams. So you're like, you know what? I think the West Coast is going to produce better teams over the next 10 years. And so you want to own a token that tracks the value of, or owns those West Coast teams. And if a West Coast team keeps winning the Super Bowl or NHL or, you know, whatever it is, then that value will obviously go up over time. Or it could be New York sports teams. So the level of where we go once we put these things on chain is unbelievable.
And I want to back up because, you know, going back to even the last space, we talked about education, and there's some advanced nomenclature that comes into that you need to know before you can even get into RWA, and that is securities. You know, you mentioned it earlier, Alex. It's security. People don't know what that means. A normal person is just going to be like, "Oh, what? Yeah, okay, whatever." Like, there's some serious education that we need to do, just kind of in general, right, to get people to know what we're talking about. Because if you don't, the very key thing being a security. And you know, you also mentioned ETF, which is really important right now. We have with the emergence of the Bitcoin ETF. These are things that people don't know what that means. Like, so the nomenclature, as we used to say, is very important here. And so yeah, it's all about education, and we got to take it one step at a time. Because if you truly don't know what like a security is, or what that means, RWA being a security, then it's hard to explain the difference between an NFT and an RWA, right? Just hearing that clip about saying, "Oh, I just want to tokenize everything." Yeah, that's exact. It's like NFTs all over again, right? Like 3 years ago, when we're like, "Oh, we can just make anything an NFT and this and that." I mean, we didn't know what we were talking about at the time. I would say that RWAs were what we were talking about, or what we wanted back then, but we just weren't there yet, right? It is, but yeah. Go ahead, Alex. I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you brought up the NFT part. We can make anything an NFT, because there are companies that made houses into an NFT. And then I was like, okay, well, great. Now it's on chain. What can you do with it as just one house? And they're like, well, you can fractionalize ownership of it and then give it to, you know, have like 1,000 investors own this one house. And I was like, okay, so you just created tokenization with a token with just extra steps. You're creating this NFT, then you're fractionalizing that single NFT. You either should have just issued multiple NFTs, like serialized NFTs. So, like, let's say you issue 100 NFTs of NFT 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of like stocks. You know, stock registry number 1, 2, 3, 4, or you just create a token for that house, and then, you know, fractionalize slicing the NFT of the house is kind of like just extra steps. And that's actually it's happened, but that's the maturing process of getting somewhere, right? If you like, you know, chastise your kid for not running or sprinting when they are just learning to walk as a baby, you never get anywhere. So it's part of the process. When it comes to education and learning, I think actually people are a lot farther along down this route of understanding RWAs. They just don't know it yet, and as the market builds, it's going to take off like wildfire. And the reason I say this is because, you know, Crypt King, let's say you got $10,000 spare right now. You want to put it into some sort of asset so you can make money. Everybody wants to make money, right? Everybody wants to make more money where they are now, no matter where you are in the totem pole. So you can't really go and just like buy a part of a hotel or buy a part of a house. But you can go to StockX and go buy some rare Nike shoe that you want to trade or hope it goes up in value, or to go buy a Pokemon card, or you want to go buy, I don't know, what are the kids trading these days? But, you know, people are so used to trading StockX, or even, you know, there was a company that was tokenizing fine bottles of whiskey that Sam's connected to. And, you know, people are inherently, they understand like collectibles in a way. First, it started with like, I'm going to create a cute collection of stamps. And then it, you know, went on to other things like Beanie Babies and Pokemon cards and baseball cards. But nowadays, people have this inherent understanding that I want to buy this because it's going to go up in value. And that's the same thing as a tokenized, it's almost the same thing as a tokenized RWA is I'm going to purchase this item and I hope that it goes up over time and I'll sell it to somebody else as the popularity or value grows. So the same way that people buy and sell sneakers today is the same way people are going to buy and sell tokenized RWAs, hotels, investments, digitally tomorrow. And that tomorrow is coming really soon. But Theo, you mentioned something about not understanding the difference between like what a security is, what a security isn't. It's a very blurry line sometimes with RWAs when it's a hotel and a home and it's securitized and tokenized as an asset on chain. It's clearly a security. Why, if you would tokenize a pair of Nike shoes, why StockX isn't looked at as securities? It's a whole different conversation to go down. But if you want to understand what a security is, there's something called the Howey test. It's 4 points that you can look up. But in short, a security is basically the way the government decides to kind of over-regulate your life and quote unquote protect you by these assets. And they've put now rules and regulations on how you can buy into these things. So a security is essentially, I mean, for the most part, they consider them all investments, and I'm highly generalizing here. But I think you're going to start seeing a blurred line between if we're trading these shoes, why are they not securities? If we're trading these hotels on chain, why are they securities? And I already know that some countries are starting to look at RWAs and seeing, or saying more so, we need to loosen up these security rules so that people can buy in and out of these opportunities the way that they're buying in and out of these collectibles. So we're going to start on some countries like the United States, you're seeing a crackdown. In other countries, you're starting to see an opening up. That line is going to be blurred and clarified as we, mature the industry.
Do you see like because somebody asked me this weekend, they were like, we had, like I said, a 4-hour debate on RWAs, and it was like, somebody asked me, would you be excited about a single home that was fractionalized? And I was like, I wouldn't be excited about that, but I'd be excited if there was a bundle of 20 homes that were like AAA certified. And like now I see more opportunity for growth compared to just one home. Do you think we'll be seeing that in the future? Will they'll be kind of like they were before, AAA bundles on homes where you'll see RWAs that might have like 100 homes bundle in it, and things like that?
Probably. Before you get into the details, Alex. Yeah.
I'm so dying to answer this. But
yeah. So my first thought is yes, we're probably going to see that, but the problem is it's going to make what happened in 2008 a lot easier to do, and that's my opinion. Alex, go ahead.
Well, I think it's actually going to be a lot more, let's say, fragmented, because in 2008 it was a lot more insular in terms of like it was just big banks, and it's going to be a lot more fragmented, and you're going to see failures of lending platforms occur more frequently than building up into these giant behemoths and then the legs being cut out from under them when it turns out that they were just basically defrauding everybody. But I think you'll have a more equitably distributed system of RWAs and then RWA lenders and RWA issuers and RWA marketplaces. And so it's not that something's going to be too big to fail, but it's just there will be consolidation to the largest blockchains for RWAs, the largest issuers and marketplaces for RWAs. But being on chain, and especially in an open source world, it's going to allow for this wider diversity of platforms to rise up. So yes, on one hand it could, on the other hand, maybe not. On what Crypt King was saying about like bundling of homes, they're already doing it. I'm actually like pulling up Realty right now. I think Realty has bundled a couple properties together onto a single token. And I take that back, by the way, Realty on Crypt King, what I said about Lofty issuing something in Paraguay, it was Realty issuing it in Panama, but the point still stands. So I think they've bundled a few homes together. I'm trying to scroll through. They've done like 500 properties, but we definitely will. And I also know because we've been in talks to tokenize kind of like suburban projects where a developer goes and builds 500 homes, and it's managed by a real estate management company. But you've got, and it's not 100 homes, 20 homes across 10 neighborhoods or something or states. it's all in one living complex. But yeah, you're gonna start seeing basically everything you know in real estate in every different way tokenized.
Yeah, and let me clarify, and just me personally, I just have a healthy fear of bundled products like homes and similar. Another one that I really don't like is the like the bundling of penny stocks sold for higher grades and stuff. Um, and that all happens. That all currently exists today. And yeah, so I just have a respectable fear of it. Not that I'm against it altogether, right? Um,
So
I'm
Theo,
just
when
seeing
you
how
bought
they,
your
yeah.
N64 Xbox, did you buy the bundle with like the games and the extra controllers that came in them, or did you buy all your accessories one by one?
I just get the standard edition a year after launch because I don't trust any of that shit. No.
There we go. Anything with a bundle, don't sell to Theo. That should
Yeah,
be a
no,
marketing
I'm
thing.
not. I'm not in. Yeah, it's. I've been in marketing and business my whole life, and it's just hard to get around the idea that these products need to be bundled because they can't be sold separately. And it's a personal thing. Um, but I do, like I said before, the perishable and monolithic purchases, like that's what I'm really excited about. Like that's what I am personally giddy about, right? Being able to own something that I can't maybe own in real life, or a piece of, like you said, a hotel that I would never be able to afford um, as a person, right? So yeah, those are what I'm like really, really, really giddy about. But yeah, it is an interesting other part of the conversation that I don't think I considered before. Yeah, the bundles of stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, bundles can be used to like, slap lipstick on a pig, but they also can be used to diversify your risk across a portfolio of assets. So, you can put like a bundle, so to say, or of, a hotel in Los Angeles, a hotel in Miami, a hotel in Dallas, a hotel in Orlando, and then you're kind of protected if there's a massive earthquake and California gets knocked off and becomes an island. So instead of just owning, like imagine if you just, if you put 100% of your eggs in that California, like God forbid, right? I mean, my mom's in LA, so, and tons of people, but imagine if you just owned one hotel in LA and, God forbid something happened to it, earthquake, they didn't have insurance and it went down. I mean, in a tokenized product, it would most likely have insurance, but if you diversify that across hotels in 5 states, you're protected from that, catastrophic risk, and that's why diversification is good. But it's definitely used to put lipstick on a pig, and then
I like
kind of like in The Big Short, you
diversification.
take a bunch of bees. You
I
what?
like the first. I do like the idea of diversing, like getting like a package of, say, like I could buy one, let's say RWA that represents a couple different crypto blockchains, right? That I don't know. That's a hypothetical. That'd be cool, right? That's diversifying. That's awesome. I like that. Yeah, it's just it's a slapping the lipstick on a pig. You brought up video games and the video game bundle consoles, and it's funny that you mentioned that. It took me a minute to kind of like put the thought together. And do you know the reason they started doing that actually is to sell the console? They know the console wasn't going to sell unless they put Mario next to it. That's how it got so popular, right? The PlayStation or Xbox, as you said, people didn't buy the Xbox 360 because they were giddy about the Xbox 360. No, they wanted Halo 2, or Halo 3, whatever came out at the time. And they got it with the fastest way they could play that game was to get the bundle. So that's actually why they
All
did
right,
it, was to
let's be
sell the
fair.
system.
Halo made the Xbox.
Right,
Let's be
right,
fair with this, right?
exactly. So that's what my original point. Bundles at their very core are because one, if not multiple things in the product won't be, let's say, as successful separately.
Debatable, but you do have a point. Like
Very debatable.
let's say on one end of the spectrum, it is like that, and the other end of the spectrum, it could be it diversifies. And like
Diversifying is cool.
for
Like
example, with Maven.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
well, I'm just going right to that with Maven. We built it so that you can have multi-collateral vaults, and you can take your different assets, deposit them into a vault, take $30 of Bitcoin, $30 of ETH, $30 of Maven, put it into a vault, and borrow against your total portfolio, so that if one asset goes down in value on a trading day, you don't get liquidated on that loan. And that's the same thing. And that's why, especially when it comes to RWAs and why they'll be so important in DeFi, is that A, we've got mature products, but B, you diversify your risk portfolio across a basket of mature assets. Except for with RWAs, as opposed to a REIT, you'll be able to choose your own basket of assets. You'll be able to control your finances in that DeFi. You'll be able to control your loan, pay it back on your terms. Assuming you get into the smart contract, because the smart contract has its own terms, but you can pay it back on your schedule according to those terms. And you could sell it when you want to, on a weekend, at night, on Christmas. Probably won't have that much liquidity on Christmas, but the RWAs allow you to control your financial future and your access to financial choices and operations.
Yeah, for me, that's going to be key, is smart diversification to make sure there's fully balanced. Like you said, that's where I'm really, really interested, is like, how do you correctly fully balance out your portfolio to make sure that, you have a little bit of here, a little bit of there, and all that good stuff.
Well, that's not really, I would say that's not really my place to comment on there, right? Because then you start getting into like financial advice areas. Do your own research. But there's, you have to come up with a strategy, I guess, that's right for you, right? Or get a financial advisor. But what's going to be really interesting is that eventually there's going to be, think about it this way. When you used to have like an asset manager, so he can actually, now with RWAs, we can build them in a way that it's like a smart asset management system where your advisor will be able to buy assets for you, but they'll be sitting in your account. And you can always see if they're there or not. And then he can buy them, put them into your portfolio. And then when he wants to sell, you can give him access to sell it, or send it to him. He sells it and gives you the proceeds. You can custody your own assets, and then you don't have to worry about like, oh, well, if my asset manager goes under, I lose everything, or is it going to get tied up in court for years? You have to wait for insurance to kick in. So that diversification is going to be key, but it's also going to create a lot of, I think what some people don't realize about RWAs as well, is everybody's like, oh, okay, like we can now buy into this hotel. And listen, I'm in that boat too, right? I'm excited by all this, but there's also the picks and shovels around RWAs that are opportunities as well. Which blockchains are going to win the RWA, let's say, competition? Which platforms and issuance platforms are going to offer the best RWA tokens? Which marketplaces are going to give you the most, like the best access to trading? Is there more liquidity on one or the other? Is one just an OTC, like a bulletin board exchange? Is it a centralized exchange for RWAs? Is it a like Lofty's got a proactive market maker for RWAs? Then there's going to be lending on RWAs. Then there's going to be digital bundling of like ETFs of RWAs, wallets that support RWAs, data providing companies like imagine Nansen and Masari that then go into RWA. So it's the RWA ecosystem, with Ernst & Young projecting, I think it's $28.7 trillion will be tokenized on chain by 2030, which is just 6 years from now. That RWA ecosystem is going to be so much bigger than just the asset itself that sits on the chain, but everything. Like, think of it as automobiles, right? It's not just Ford building a car. Ford needs to work with Michelin and well, I was about to say Firestone, but that's a bad memory. Ford needs to work with Michelin and Goodyear and glass manufacturers, and then there's gas stations or electric charging stations. There's people to wash your cars and clean your cars. There are parking lots. So the automobile industry is so much bigger than just buying a car. And then the RWA ecosystem is going to be so much bigger than just the RWA itself. So we're going to see this just radical change in just like platforms coming soon.
So a controversial question, Alex.
I love those. Hit me with
it. What will, once RWAs advance to the type of situation where you're satisfied that is like now a mass product across many different spectrums of the market, what is going to be the use case then for NFTs and decentralization if we've pushed it? Because I'm trying to think, like, because like now you can basically tokenize almost anything, but the whole argument was securities, and that's where like a lot of pushback was coming from, like, let's say, the Howey test, SEC, blah blah blah. So, but when we get further where RWAs are fully mature and like people are aware of them, what will be the use case then for decentralization and NFTs and stuff, in your opinion?
I think that's left to be seen on what happens with regulation. We can see some countries open up regulation to say, you know what, if you tokenize this on chain and you put these parameters, if you're able to upload these documents on chain and we integrate our government systems with your system, then it can trade freely. You don't have to have a super admin to control it. I think we're really far away from that, though. When it comes to decentralization, I think it allows for, it's a hard one because RWAs are inherently centralized. I mean, I don't like to say that because I think there's an element of what is the value of RWAs on blockchain rather than what is the value of RWAs on in terms of decentralization. Because some people might say, oh, well, if they're centralized anyways, you might as well just run it on a centralized ledger. But then you don't get the interoperability of it being on a blockchain where, okay, well, you know what, today or soon you can take a loan against your RWAs on Maven, but maybe some other platform comes out that offers you a better token incentive yield because they're brand new on borrowing with them, and you want to move your assets over to some other lending platform and borrow there. And I think blockchain facilitates that interoperability, those money Legos that inherently centralized systems don't offer. It's not full decentralization, but I like to call the tokenized RWAs in this permissioned fashion, rather than calling it DeFi or TradeFi. I like to call it open finance because it's not exactly DeFi, but it's not exactly traditional finance. And we're going to see a more interoperable future with that. I hope to see a point where we can actually have full DeFi with an RWA, but knowing the way humanity works and governments work, it's a far bet.
It's the same with NFTs too, right? And that's why I don't really like talking about centralization, decentralization. And I think for the most part, they're just words, right? Because in NFT, you buy an NFT. Not every NFT gives you the rights to the character or the subject of the NFT. You have the right to trade that token, but that's it. You don't have rights to the art at all. So what does it all mean? Like, there's these questions, like, is an NFT decentralized? Like, is it? I don't know. Like, or is it centralized by the artist who makes it? I think these questions are, just words, and I don't know. In my opinion,
Well, the biggest thing I like from what Alex said was because, like you said, Theo, these are like delicate subjects because people have become maxi to words, like they've become so tied to certain words that like actually will change their temperamental. And it's like, bro, you don't even understand the word that you're actually allowing you to get you pissed off, like. And so one of the things that Alex said that like I look for words that make me go down rabbit holes. And when he said open finance, it all kind of made a little more sense to me, and so that's what I like. I like the reterming of certain words to understand new tech. I like things like that. So right now, when he was like saying open finance, it kind of rang the bell in my head,
Oh, absolutely. That happened. Yeah, when he first said that to me, I was on board as well. I think that's such a better term. Because if you think about it, I'm always trying to pitch the game companies getting into blockchain, and RWAs may be the way it happens. So like when you buy a game that's digitized, you shouldn't have any rights to the game itself or anything like that. It's owned by a centralized entity, the game developer. but you have that open permissionless ability to maybe sell that game on a secondary market and give the original developer royalties or whatever the case may be. Open finance is a lot better of a term, I think.
So, Alex, do you consider crowdsource funding a future source of RWAs, like for new companies that come in and a more, because crowdsource funding is one of the ones that is like a hot point for like certain regulators and stuff. And so when I think about an RWA, could you RWA crowdsource funding for a new company?
It's really funny you say that, because crowdfunding used to be up to about $1.07 million a year that you can do with Reg CF. And then it got upgraded along with a couple other regulations, but Reg CF got updated to, I believe, $5 million a year in raising capital. And then I also believe Start Engine, the crowdfunding website, is also working on some form of tokenization as well. So that when you buy into these, kind of young startups, that you get it as a security token. But RWAs are okay. So when it comes to crowdfunding, crowdfunding already existed in, let's say, gate-kept, high net worth individual investing in the form of syndicating a deal. You'd take one hotel, you'd put it into an LLC, and you fractionalize ownership between 5 to 10 investors, for example, right? But that's just 5 to 10 investors putting in, 10 mil each or 5 mil each or whatever their contribution is to it. That already exists. That's actually quite interesting that you brought that up, Crypt King, because we're also talking to somebody else about tokenizing their investment syndication company. They manage a portfolio of assets, and they're all in their own LLCs with different investors in each different, essentially, SPV. Crowdfunding is just the more retail-facing, lower amounts of capital. You could put in $50 instead of 50,000 or 5 million. So yeah, crowdfunding, syndication, and tokenized real-world assets are all going to be interlinked. I think they really start to, because the way technology has worked out and the way we didn't have this technology in the past, it's going to start blurring the lines between what's a syndicated deal and what's crowdfunding. Why would we do Reg CF or Reg S or Reg D? Don't put a sad face. Oh, maybe you just...
No,
it
was
the
accident.
wrong click.
It was accident. Yeah.
Yeah. I figured. But this is a good thing. I mean, when you actually remove friction, you end up, in an interesting way. You make it easier for people with more access to capital to compound that capital. But right now, we're stuck in a system where people who aren't ultra high net worth individuals or accredited investors just simply don't have access to these investments. But we do allow them to go buy as much alcohol as they want or go to Vegas and gamble away their life savings. And so this idea of government protections, I'm getting really libertarian about this right now, but the idea of government protections is really a government restriction from allowing you to move up the totem pole. And so the idea of crowdfunding, syndicating deals, RWAs, that is going to, we're gonna see these lines blurred, and we're gonna bring access to investments that the rest of the world really doesn't have. Like, if you're in America right now, almost no matter how rich or poor you are, you're kind of part of the 1% of the global population. And we can have, especially when you securitize something or commodify something, but you can have, I like to think of it as like a rising tide raises all ships. And so if we tokenize these things and we bring bigger access to capital, the amount of money that a person in a third world country needs to live is a lot lower than the person in a first world country, but they don't have any access to equity. And equity is really the way you build wealth. So if they don't even have access to equity, you have entire countries that will just always remain poor. You'll have the hungrier, sharkier people in those countries, work their way up the totem pole. That's, humanity for you. But the regular person across the rest of the world has no access to any sort of way to build up. And at the end of the day, I think most people want to provide a better life for their families than what they had. So that blend, that fusion, that evolution of crowdfunding will just simply turn into access. Well, on the investor side, it's access to investments. On the startup side, it's access to startup capital, and more easily startup capital, because if you've ever started a company, raising capital is one of the most difficult things to do. You need a good team, you need a good product, you need tech, you need marketing, you need everything. But also raising that capital. How do you find? How many people have ideas and that can execute on those ideas, but they can't find investors? Most original, angel investment comes from friends and family. And that's where a lot of the wealth building comes from, by the way, because if you have an investment that does well, then your multiples there are way higher. So imagine if you had websites upon websites upon websites that offered you, vetted startups or vetted opportunities to investment. Hey,
Yeah,
we bought this piece of land, we're going to build a hotel on it. It's worth X today, it'll be worth Y tomorrow.
because
So
that was the biggest problem for me is like I worked so hard to get the 125 that was needed to be an accredited, excuse me, credit investor. Then they raised it to 250, and I was like, wait, like I got everything ready, my paperwork's ready, and they were like, sorry, this year's now 250. And I'm seeing my friends that are getting, like, some of the people I know, they were seed funders for Blur, they were seed funders for LooksRare, and because I could not get on that credit investors list, I wasn't allowed to get some of these seed funding. And it's like it pissed me off so bad because I worked my ass off to get that 125 ranking that they wanted, and then they doubled it to 250. And I was like, shit, man, like this is not good. And right now, if you look at a lot of startups in the space, it's the same invest seed fund. It's the same seed funders as like 80% of all the other startups in this space. And it's like, if we could spread that around where more people would get a chance to get in, because that's where the real money making's happening, and it trickles down from that point on.
don't you feel protected though? Don't you feel protected that they double that amount and you can't get access to
No,
the
not at
investments
all.
that you want
Because
to?
even Jimmy, if y'all know Jimmy East, he hit me up because he was like, and he told me, he was like, uh, if you don't have that 250, you don't deserve to be investing in the companies we're investing in. And he said on the timeline, like so like arrogant, and I was like, oh, these guys, man, I want to just equal this playing field. And so yeah, it made me so, but it also educated me into like today, coming to this step here. I believe everything happens for a reason. And so yeah, it made me want so hungerness on trying to find out ways to get early investment opportunities in certain areas.
Yeah, it's what they're doing is absolutely insane by these accredited investor laws. I really hope they get rid of them. It's government overreach at its worst. So hopefully pretty soon we can uh, see brighter days without them.
I want to jump in and we're coming up on an hour. So if anybody down below wants to come up and ask any questions, join the conversation, that would be your last chance. If not, we'll continue for a little bit on, and then we'll wrap up the conversation.
Or feel free to join us next week as well.
Oh yes, I will talk about the next week in my outro as we go through it as well. But I don't want to end it right in the middle of the conversation. So, Script King, you have any more questions about RWAs and stuff, and the
Just
importance of RWAs in DeFi?
Yeah, just what I mean, I can ask questions for days, but the biggest thing for me is what's the next steps for y'all? Like, what are we looking forward for y'all? Like, what do we need to be, besides joining the Discord and making sure we get the information out on y'all, but what is anything y'all need from us? I guess is my question.
So we've got a series of announcements coming soon about what our next steps are specifically in the RWA space. And so for right now, spread the message, join the Discord, invite your friends. Stay tuned for a lot of different announcements. Crypt King, you and I could chat online. I can give you a little bit of a sneak peek, a tiny bit into what we're doing. But it's going to come out pretty soon. So, hold on to the edge of your seat, grab your popcorn, and, just be a part of the ride.
Yeah, definitely. Right now, it's about learning, right? Everybody should just be out there learning, like you are, Crypt King, just learning about RWAs, what all this stuff means, as it all gets announced by pretty much everybody, right? This is where crypto's going. And there's also, if I was going to say a point of action, right? We've been releasing small clips from the space, about 30-second clips that go over, what different things are and what they mean. What is what are we doing at Maven? What's the MVM token? What's a satellite? What's an oracle? So yeah, if you see those, check them out and share them. Share them to everybody you know. They're only 30 seconds long, and yeah, they're very informative. And with that being said, I believe we should wrap up the space here. It's been an amazing space, and RWAs are going to be super important, not only for DeFi, but just crypto as a whole. Like you said, Crypt King, the second you hear about the word, you'll see it everywhere, right? It's what everybody is talking about. I think I said that in the first space. It's what everybody is talking about, whether you know that or not. RWAs are the next thing. They're the next big thing, and I'm excited to get into it. So definitely keep coming to these spaces every Monday. We host at 5 p.m. UTC, and we're gonna get together and talk about Maven, talk about RWAs, and just keep the conversation going. So please join us next week. Join our Discord. And with that being said, thank you everybody for coming out. Sam,
thank
Alex,
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Theo, I wanted to add one more thing to what you said, is that not only are RWAs going to be the next big thing, but RWAs are going to be the next big sustainable thing. And so you don't have to worry. It's not like, oh, well, crypto's super volatile. NFTs are super volatile. It's my penguin or monkey or, no offense, Crypt King. Got a lot of friends who've got apes. Or my punk or I such a DeFi person, I'm blanking on more. But is my digital art or PFP is going to be worth something later down the line? RWAs are going to be the next big thing and sustainable thing, probably as a generational opportunity. So thank you everyone for coming out. Share the message. Join us next week. DM me any questions. Crypt King, we got to talk. So send me a message. And Theo, thank you. Sam, thanks. And everyone down below.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I'm seeing the excitement from others. Like I said, I mentioned it the other day in a late night space, and we went 4 hours of just going at it, debating, talking about different use cases. So I see the excitement, and so I appreciate y'all for answering all my questions. Maybe next week I'll grill Sam because I'd like to just hear it from a different, like a different voice, but definitely I appreciate y'all for all the information because it's much needed.
Thank you,
Sam,
everybody.
challenge should be accepted.
Fine. I think I'm going to be sick next week. I'm sorry.
Sam, last thoughts before we close out.
Nah, dude, you guys have a good night. I enjoyed it. I think it was a lot to digest what I was going through. Gonna need more next week. Feel free to ask questions in Telegram or the Discord. We'll be there to answer. Probably not right on time, but we'll definitely get to it and answer.
Awesome. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Goodbye now.